The first SaaS startup that I ever launched failed hard, but I didn't give up. My second startup, Exploding Topics, was recently valued at $7 million. And in this video, I'm going to reveal the biggest lessons that I learned from these two experiences and show you exactly how you can apply them to your own business to grow even faster. First, let me quickly outline what my failed startup was and exactly why it failed. So it was called YoRocket, and it basically was a way to test different title tags in Google search. So in case you're not super familiar with SEO, one of the ranking factors that Google uses to rank websites is click-through rate. So if someone's searching for a specific keyword and they click on your result more than normal for that position in the search results, they're going to give you a rankings boost. So a few years ago, everyone realized this and started testing different title tags to stand out in Google. But there's no good way to test different title tags. You'd basically have to create a new title tag, take a screenshot of your click-through rate, wait a few months, check the click-through rate again, and see if it was better or worse. So people were testing title tags, but it was really inefficient. So in-house, we built our own tool for testing title tags where it would basically record your current click-through rate, and then whenever you change the title, it would track the click-through rate for the new title and then compare the before and after. So I thought I was sitting on a gold mine with this software because we were using it and getting results from it, so I figured everyone else would. In fact, when I launched this software, YoRocket, to my list, I was expecting 1,000 signups in the first 2 days. And in reality, we only got 150. I was super disappointed. I even flew in our developer to come for the night of the launch, and we were going to celebrate. And instead, we were just answering support tickets and wondering why more people weren't interested in what we were selling. It's funny to look back on now, but at the time, it was really disappointing and deflating. Now, we ultimately stuck with YoRocket and tried to make improvements, roll out new features, and make it work, but it just never did. And looking back, here are the main reasons why that software failed and what you can do to avoid these same problems. The first problem was that it was too much work to use. So like I mentioned before, this software made the process of testing title tags and testing description tags to improve your click-through rate much more efficient than doing it manually, but it still required quite a bit of work from the user. So we made things a lot easier, but not really effortless. You still had to basically come up with a new title, add it to WordPress, test the new one, and check to see which one was working better. Now we automated a lot of this, but it still required some work for the user to actually get results. Looking back, we probably should have automated the whole thing where we would automatically test new title tags and just continue using the one that performed best. That way the user wouldn't have to actually do anything to get results. The second thing that really sunk this software was that it was platform specific. It was specifically for WordPress. And the reason for that was because we wanted to be where people were already sort of doing this and people were writing and changing their title tags, which was inside of their CMS. Now at the time, I had seen statistics like 65% of websites use WordPress, 70% of websites use WordPress, and a lot of sites do use WordPress, but a lot less than you might think. In fact, that first night when we had the launch, the number one question we got was, does this work on Shopify? Does this work on a different platform? Does this work on this platform? And I realized that we're kind of stuck because we only supported one platform. And that's when I realized we made a mistake because it would be possible to build an actual platform that plugged into Google Search Console and plugged into Google Analytics, and you could do all this stuff in there and it would work on every platform. But it was kind of too late for that because we built this thing basically for WordPress. The last issue that caused YoRocket to fail was that it didn't solve a pressing problem. It didn't solve a problem that people really wanted to solve or needed to solve. It was testing your title tag to get a slightly better click-through rate so you get slightly more traffic in Google. Now, to be clear, if you change your click-through rate from like really bad to really good, that can dramatically increase the amount of organic traffic that you get, but that's sort of a rare edge case. In most cases, we're talking about an increase of 5 to 10% more traffic to that page. Plus, a lot of people weren't even doing this already. It didn't fit into an existing behavior, right? There were people that like me who were testing the title tags using spreadsheets and tracking and all this stuff, but the vast majority of people weren't already doing this. So creating a streamlined version of a process that no one's already going through didn't really move the needle. But more important than that, there were a lot of people that were sitting in front of their laptops, spending hours testing their title tags. So we basically created a streamlined process for a process that people weren't really doing all that much. There was a small segment of people that loved what we were doing because they were already doing title tag testing the manual way. But it was literally like 1 or 2% of our customer base. The rest were like, wait, what is title tag testing? How do I do this? What's the benefit? They didn't really get it, why this would help them. So if you look at this from this business marketing approach of problem expert and problem aware, where most people in your target market are problem aware, where they know they have a problem, in this case, they want more traffic, but they don't know about any of the solutions. So if you present some niche, weird solution that we increase your click-through rate and you get more organic traffic, they're not going to really understand why that's helpful. But the problem experts, which is a small percentage of people, but they're more advanced, they will understand because they've tried every SEO tool, every SEO strategy, and they can see why this fits in the market. So we did appeal to those problem experts, and those were our best customers, but it's always going to be 5 to 10, maybe 20% of your market, and then you're tapped out. And then it's all about the problem aware. And we just weren't able to get those problem aware people to care about what we're offering. So switching gears, here's how I applied these lessons from my failed startup to my successful startup. The same lesson that's helped us generate millions in revenue. Now, the first one was actually something good from YoRocket that we applied to Exploding Topics, was that the product is unique. So with Exploding Topics, we don't have a lot of direct competitors. There aren't a ton of trend spotting platforms out there, which helps us stand out. In fact, no one really asks us like, how do you compare to this thing? How do you compare to this thing? Or why should I switch from this thing to another thing? And in SaaS, that's usually the question that most SaaS platforms get because they have a lot of competition. Like I mentioned, with YoRocket, it was unique, but to a fault, where it stood out. There wasn't anything like it, but people didn't even know the problem existed. They weren't looking for a solution. That's not the case with Exploding Topics, right? People do want to find trends. In fact, for some businesses like e-commerce and investing, it can be a huge competitive advantage, and they're already using different stuff like Google Trends to accomplish finding new trends. But we're in a market that's not super competitive. It's more of a blue ocean 0 to 1 situation. And that's one of the reasons that Exploding Topics has grown really quickly, is that we're unique, but we also solve a problem that people are already trying to solve, as opposed to YoRocket, where we're like, there's this whole new strategy you can use to get more organic traffic, and we created a streamlined process. It requires a lot more education and convincing to get someone to buy that, versus you're already using all these strategies to find trends. You're still missing trends all the time. We can help you find all of them in your niche. In fact, that's one of the main things that helped Exploding Topics stand out in the early days, was that we were unique. There wasn't anything else like us on the market. So we were able to stand out on day one. The second thing that helped Exploding Topics succeed where YoRocket failed was that we provided instant value without the user needing to do a ton of work. Like I mentioned before, to get results with YoRocket, you needed to find a page on your site that you wanted to get more traffic to that maybe had a low click-through rate. You needed to come up with a new title. You needed to write the new title and push it live, and then remember to check how it did versus the previous one, and then decide whether or not to use the new title or the old title. With Exploding Topics, I took that lesson to heart, and I realized we needed to deliver trends in the easiest way possible, where the user doesn't need to do any work whatsoever. And that's why our first monetization before we got into SaaS was a paid newsletter. That way, our customers wouldn't need to do any work at all. They wouldn't need to log in, learn a new platform, learn a new feature. They just need to literally open an email, read it, and get trends delivered to them. Now, we eventually pivoted to SaaS, even though we still offer the paid newsletter because a certain segment of our customers really like that. But even with our SaaS, the value is instantly available. There's no work to be done. We don't even have tooltips really or documentation because it's so straightforward to use. You just basically log in, go to a feature that's valuable to you, whether that's a list of trending startups, a list of trending products, using trend search, and just see trends that are relevant to you and your business. That's really all there is to it. So for your own business, and if you're launching a SaaS startup, how can you do this with your SaaS? The number one thing is to make the value instant and requiring little to no work from the user. So for example, if you have a podcast hosting platform, how can you make it where someone doesn't need to log in ever again? They log in, they connect some things, and then from then on, they don't need to log in or do anything or learn anything. The last thing that made the biggest difference that we really didn't do with YoRocket all that much was focusing on our top 1% of customers that already love us. So like I mentioned with YoRocket, we had these sort of problem experts that loved what we were doing because we were saving them time and effort and helping them get better results. But most people that contacted us and were our biggest chunk of our customer base, like 90%, were problem aware people where they knew they didn't have a lot of traffic, but they didn't really see how we fit in the marketplace. They weren't experts into different ways to get more traffic. So we had to do a lot of education and convincing and arm twisting to get them to try the tool. So we created most of our marketing and most of our features around getting this group to buy what we're selling, to convince them that increasing a click-through rate is one of the best ways to get more organic traffic. And looking looking back, that was a big mistake because we already had a small segment of people that loved us. If we just talked to them and listened to them and built something for them, we probably still could have built a significant business just on the back of that 5 to 10% group. So with Exploding Topics, we really just doubled down on our best customer groups as opposed to trying to convince people that require a lot of convincing. Specifically, what we did a few months ago that made a huge difference was we downloaded all of our list of customers sorted by how much they paid us. So basically people that had signed up to our highest plan and not churned. And those people ended up being the people at the top of the list. We looked at them literally one by one. We looked at where they lived, what kind of credit cards did they use to sign up, what industry are they in. We looked at their individual LinkedIns and Twitters and Facebook profiles. We really want to understand these people at a deep level. And we stopped at around 100 because we noticed the same pattern was appearing over and over again. And we learned that our best customers were basically in two groups. We had one customer group in e-commerce. Either they ran an e-commerce site or they ran marketing for a lot of different e-commerce sites, and they just needed to know what products are trending, which is one of our specialties. The other group were VCs and investors. They wanted to know what markets are emerging, what startups are growing quickly that are a little bit under the radar. That's another thing that we did really well. So instead of creating features for all these other groups that hadn't signed up and trying to convince them, we just created more features specific to these two groups. We have a whole feature dedicated to trending products, and we have a whole feature dedicated to trending startups that appeal to this top 1% customer group. They're basically sending us great feature ideas every single month. We're building them, sending an email saying, we just built this feature that you requested, which is blowing their minds because no one else is doing that. Most times when you send a feature request to a SaaS startup, they're like, yeah, we'll add it to our list or whatever. We're actually saying, we built this, it's live. And they're increasing their seats. They went from 10 seats to 20 seats. Now they're over 100 seats because we're just making them so happy. And that's a problem expert, super group of people that are really interested in what we're selling. So we're spending more time serving them as opposed to trying to convince this larger group. And that's basically it. That's how I was able to take this failed startup, pull something good out of it, which are these lessons that I learned, and then apply it to this new startup, Exploding Topics. Now I'd like to hear from you. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.